Hi, I'm Caden, here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On today's episode of Eating W's, we have our very late draft rankings. It's been a crazy couple of weeks, including the draft, and then after the draft, schedule-wise for both of us, with some change-ups happening. But we finally got the real chance to think about it, really build our opinions.
Mm-hmm.
No rash decisions, no on-the-spot thinking. It was, very thought out, just as everything we do is, as you can tell by how organized we always are. Of course, a joke there, but all jokes aside, we are very excited for this episode. We just, right before we started, looked through an NFL ranking of the way they ranked it, and I absolutely tore it apart. I hated it, and I'm slightly irritated by it going into this episode. But I'll get over it. I'll survive. So we're going to do 3 teams here each. We're going to do our favorite draft, our least favorite draft, and then, of course, our teams with Packers and Vikings, respectively. So, Callan, we will just jump right into it, and I will let you start off with your favorite draft.
So my favorite draft and my presumed overall winner of the NFL draft has to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I give an A+ to, who drafted to solidify their offensive line with their first 2 picks, with Troy Fratanu at offensive tackle, and then interior offensive lineman Zach Frazier from West Virginia. And then they went in the middle rounds with Roman Wilson and Peyton Wilson, 2 respective early first round mock draft picks. So you're getting first round talent in the late or in the middle rounds here for the Steelers, and I think those are solid pickups. Roman Wilson is going to complement George Pickens perfectly now that they lost Deontay Johnson, and Peyton Wilson's probably going to be a starter in that linebacking role for the Steelers. And they picked up Logan Lee from Iowa to help solidify that defensive line. Nice pickup always when you pick up an Iowa player. But I really thought they had a great draft. They didn't have to make any major moves to, jeopardize next year's draft capital or have to make any, rash decisions. So I thought they really had a really solid draft, and I think that this is going to be a very impactful draft class for the Steelers this year.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, you got 2 new quarterbacks coming in. Who knows who's going to start week 1 between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields right now. But no matter who it is, they need to be protected better than they did for Kenny Pickett.
Mm-hmm.
So to go out there and use your first 2 draft picks for 2 first-round linemen, if we're being dead honest, and getting Troy Fautanu at 20, and then getting very arguably the best center in the entire draft, right up there with Jackson Powers-Johnson and Graham Barton, and Zach Frazier at 51 in the second round. That's some great stuff. And then, like you said, with those 2 guys in the third round, they're just good players that you're picking up. I mean, Roman Wilson, no, he's not going to go out there and light up the scoreboard. He's not going to make those George Pickens-esque catches, but he's going to go out there and be a really reliable, solid receiver.
Mm-hmm.
You get a starter and my favorite linebacker personally in the whole draft in Peyton Wilson in the third round. And then it's such a safe bet to go with the defensive Iowa player. Same with Roman Wilson. They're not going to go out there and be some freak athlete and light it up, but they're just going to play well. They'll use him as a rotational piece. He'll be great in the run game. He'll get a little bit of that pass rush. I'm sure they move him in a little bit just because he's really big for a defensive end, and I think they run that 3-4 with those good blitzing outside linebackers.
He fits perfectly for that defensive end 3-4.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be really good for them, and I completely agree. In this NFL ranking, they have him marked as their number 1 ranked too, and it really was just one of the best drafts this year. It really was. They killed it. So moving on to my top draft ranking this year, I have none other than the Philadelphia Eagles, which if you look at the draft as a whole, everything put together, they didn't absolutely light it up like the Steelers did. If you look like round by round, the Steelers obviously beat them, but I think that they won so much in those first 2 rounds. I mean, if you look at the Eagles roster right now, it is stacked almost front to back. Because, I mean, even though they lost Jason Kelce this offseason, you got Cam Jurgens and Landon Dickerson there on the
Mm-hmm.
inside that can easily fill in. I think they did get a guard, way later, but they pick up 2 guards in Trevor Keegan and Dylan McMahon out of NC State, who was a steal in the 7th round later to maybe fill in that other interior lineman position. But the far and away biggest gap on their roster was that secondary. It was looking bad. It looks old. They needed to get some fresh faces in that secondary. And if you look at where they landed, they didn't have to move from 22 and they got their pick at top corner in the draft. They could have went Terrion Arnold or Quinion Mitchell, whoever they wanted more. They picked Quinion Mitchell. They get him in the first corner off the board at 22. And then when that happened, you're like, they didn't want DeJean. They went with the outside corner because Cooper DeJean's more of an inside guy. They're not going to get him. But then he falls all the way to 40 and they jump the Packers, who, no matter what the Packers say, was 100% going to take Cooper DeJean at 41. The second DeJean's name got called, the Packers were out of there from 41. So you jump the Packers, you seal a really good player in Cooper DeJean, and now your secondary goes from one of the worst in the leagues to maybe not one of the best in the leagues, but definitely one of the best young ones in the league. And they're going to learn so much from those guys like Darius Slay and James Bradbury coming in there. So for me, those first 2 picks alone made it just an insanely good draft. But then if you look down the board, they got other really good picks too. I think Will Shipley, running back out of Clemson, was a good pickup at 4. In the 5th round, they snagged Jeremiah Trotter, the linebacker out of Clemson, whose dad was a Philadelphia Eagle for a long time.
And
he is Jeremiah Trotter Jr. His dad was senior.
And he's going to wear the same number.
Oh, he is?
Yep,
That's really cool. I like
that's
that.
pretty neat.
And then, as I mentioned, Trevor Keegan, but more than anything, out of NC State, Dylan McMahon, I think, is one of the better offensive line prospects, or interior offensive line, rather, prospects in this whole draft, and they got him all the way down at 6. So overall, maybe not a stacked round in and round out, but just really good value picks and 2 amazing team need picks at the start.
Yeah, it definitely was filled some team needs, and they took the best player available. And that's when you hit the double-double in the draft, when you're able to fill both of those. And they had quite the pickup with Quinion Mitchell. Like you said, they had their pick between Terrion Arnold, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Cooper DeJean, and they went Quinion Mitchell as the first defensive back off the board. And I thought that he would fit more in a zone scheme. And I don't know if that must be what the Eagles run, because Quinion Mitchell was the prototypical zone scheme corner. So he will fit right into that Eagles secondary, and they will be instant starters for Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Probably, maybe not instant starters, maybe DeJean, just because he can play that inside slot and the safety role. They do still have Bradbury and Darius Slay on the outside corner, so maybe some growing room for Quinion Mitchell. I kept wanting to say Cooper.
Which I think he was the much more raw talent between your top 2 corners and Terrion Arnold and Quinion Mitchell. So if they did plan on letting him grow a little bit, I like that pick.
Yeah, and one of my favorite picks is another one of their 6th rounders in Johnny Wilson, the Florida State wide receiver, who was the Florida State number 2 wide receiver behind Keon Coleman. And he's not as big. He's more of the shifty guy. But he definitely was able to make some big plays for Florida State, and I think he'll make some big plays for the Eagles, who really seem to hit it off well with those late round wide receivers.
They really do. Yep.
And moving on to my least favorite draft, and one of the worst graded drafts, is the Dallas Cowboys, who get, in my eyes, a C-, because they did pick up Tyler Guyton, who is a nice offensive line prospect. He's still kind of raw with only 14 games under his belt, so he has to have some room to grow. But one thing about it is that the Cowboys never took a running back. They were so high on Jonathan Brooks, brought him in for multiple meetings, talked about him and gushed about him. Jerry Jones did in the day 1 recap about how he was going to be a perfect Cowboy, and then they never went and got him. The Panthers traded up 10 spots to go and get him and selected him early in the 2nd round. And Jonathan Brooks was probably going to be one of the top running backs selected in this draft. And many expected him to go to the Cowboys because of his Texas roots. And I'm surprised that he didn't go to the Cowboys because of that linkage and all that support that he had behind him. But because of that, I give them a very negative grade because of this. And they also reached on Marshawn Kneeland in the second round. They needed help with the offensive line. They go with interior offensive lineman Cooper Beebe, who maybe might be the best draft pick out of this group in the end when it's all said and done. And that's not good when your best draft pick is coming in the third round. So that means that your first 2 picks probably bombed.
Yeah, that means something went wrong somewhere.
And it's likely that those 2 are likely to bomb because of their raw ability. And even though they might have high ceilings, they have very low floors because of that. And we'll see if the no drafting a running back philosophy works out for the Cowboys, as they were able to bring back Ezekiel Elliott for a 1-year deal to re-sign with the Cowboys. So they're running it back with Ezekiel Elliott, who is coming in on his 7th, 8th year.
He's coming in out of his prime.
Yes.
That's all.
He's on the downhill slide.
Yeah.
No running backs for the Dallas Cowboys.
He's on the downhill slide and he's gaining speed. Not in a good way. Not in a good way. But yeah, I didn't even really realize that till you just said it. But yeah, no running backs is crazy. I mean, you had Jonathan Brooks there in the second round. You even had Blake Corum back there in the third round. And just such a huge handful of guys. I mean, Trey Benson, Will Shipley, who I just talked about with the Eagles. Just so many different guys you could get at so many different places. To just take 0, like not even take some small school guy in round 6 or 7 is absolutely insane. I actually do really like the Tyler Guyton pick. They didn't have to move up at all. They let the tackle fall to them.
They actually traded back.
They did. They traded back. You're correct. They were at 24. I forgot about that. So, I mean, there you go. You gain some draft capital and you still get the guy who I thought they were going to end up taking regardless and the guy that fit them best. I mean, he's just got that versatility of being able to play either side tackle, which they really need right now. I truly, really like the Tyler Guyton pick, even though he is a raw prospect. But then, like Callan said, I think they reach on Marshawn Kneeland there at 56, and then everything else is just, bleh. Like Cooper Beebe's pretty good. Like Callan said, very arguably one of the better picks they had all draft. And there's just nothing. There's really nothing for me outside of those top 2 picks, and those top 2 picks weren't even that great. So
it took another defensive back in the 5th round. Like they didn't really need a defensive back.
No.
I think that they reached for a wide receiver and panicked and took one in the 6th round from a small school, Ryan Flournoy. So we'll see if he pans out at all, but I don't see much of an impact from this Cowboys draft class, at least not right away.
Yeah, to pick up 8 players and just have them all be that is not a good draft to say the least. But you want to talk about an even worse draft. This time I am taking the true worst one, or what the NFL guys deem the worst one is. And I have, of course, the Atlanta Falcons. They give them a D in here, which is generous. I think this is straight up an F, and I don't know how you don't do anything else. I mean, you go out and you sign Kirk Cousins this year. $40 million guaranteed every single year for 4 years. And you use your top 10 pick on a quarterback. And not only that, a reach quarterback, very arguably, Bo Nix and J.J. McCarthy are both a higher-ranked quarterback than him. And easily the most injury-prone quarterback in this entire draft. It was almost, my jaw hit the floor when I heard them call Michael Penix's name. Could he prove us all wrong and go out there and in 3 or 4 years or whenever he gets his chance with Cousins, go out there and be a star? Hell yeah, he could. Any of these names could. But it is just so unlikely. And even if he does go out there and play really well, it's just as likely he tears his ACL 2 weeks in, which I don't want to happen, but it's happened before. It's very common with him, as you can see, those big season-ending injuries. So just literally they lost the draft right there. I think that they lost the draft before the first hour of the draft even being live. I really do. I don't know how you come back from that. They would have had to absolutely ball out the rest of the draft to even kind of make up for that. And they didn't do that either. Then you look at their second pick, which should supposedly be their second best player. They go Rook Orothu? Is that
Rook Ororo.
See, I can't even pronounce it. It was such a bad pick. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, it's not a terrible pick. If that's your guy, get him. But Brendan Fiske was on the board, who is such an intriguing prospect and has the athleticism and the pass rushing ability to really turn around a defensive line and would have wreaked havoc in there with Grady Jarrett. But you just pass that up and you take a guy to Clemson instead. I don't understand it. Two absolute reaches, maybe one of the bigger reaches I've seen in a long time at that 8th overall pick. And then the rest of their draft, the rest of their day 2 and their day 3, just like the Cowboys, was just so meh. They got no one who jumped off the page really, at least in draft grades. So very, very easily the worst draft grade in my opinion.
Yeah, they definitely had definitely the most surprising draft because the first 7 picks were pretty typical, and then the 8th one came and the Falcons just messed everything up and chaos ensued. But yeah, they definitely had the worst draft. They took players where better players were available. They definitely didn't take the best player available. They took for position of need. And even then it wasn't position of need because they don't need a backup quarterback. They have Taylor Heineke. So Michael Penix is going to come in and be a third stringer, at least for the first year. So,
and you're going to be paying him top 10 pick money.
Yeah, it's not even like when Rodgers or Love fell to the Packers. At least they were in the late 20s. You're paying him, like you said, top 10 pick money, which is big money. And then you're going to waste his quarterback years, his rookie deal quarterback years, with him sitting on the bench because you just paid Kirk Cousins $100 billion guaranteed to come play quarterback. So, and it's funny because he left the Vikings. A report said he left the Vikings because of the Vikings' plan to draft a quarterback. So it's just poetic justice that he goes to Atlanta, who then drafts a quarterback
even
ahead
higher than
of the Vikings.
Yeah.
Even so, poor Michael Penix, he falls into not a great situation where he's probably going to not see the field for a couple years. So it might work out for him. You know, this draft and develop. It doesn't work for everyone. A lot of teams throw their quarterbacks in the fire and it works out. And maybe Michael Penix will get thrown in the fire because Cousins is 36 and coming off an Achilles tear, and Taylor Heineke is a backup quarterback.
Taylor Heineke, yeah.
So, you know, and then when you move on to their 2nd round pick, you know, they took, like you said, they took Aurora over other guys like Fiske, and I think I might be wrong here, but I think Johnny Newton might have still been on the board.
Oh, at 35, I bet he was.
Yeah, I think he was. Who we had as a 1st round pick.
I think most people had him as a 1st round pick.
Yeah, multiple
I didn't
mock
even
drafts.
think about that. Yeah.
And then they finally take an edge rusher in the Washington edge rusher from Braylon Trice, who did lead the Washington Huskies in sacks, but that's not saying much because they come from a Pac-12 defense where it was a lot of high-powered offenses in that Pac-12, which is no more. But you know, for them to take the best edge rusher from Washington, who did have a nice season, I guess maybe that ends up being their best pick because he'll probably be the guy that gets thrown into the fire and has to start right away because many mock drafts had them taking an edge rusher because they don't have any. So they finally got one in the 3rd round, and after that, there's just really a lot of no names that maybe will end up being stars, but no one that has much impact right away.
Yeah. I'm very happy they didn't take an edge rusher, which we'll definitely talk about here in a little bit. But just something hilarious I just noticed that I'd like to point out. They took a running back in the 6th round in Alabama's Jace McClellan, and the Cowboys didn't, which is hilarious. But so now we will move on to our teams to finish things out.
The leading rusher for Alabama went in the 6th round, and it wasn't the damn Cowboys. I can't believe it.
It's so fitting.
And you want to talk about teams taking running backs? The Green Bay Packers, who I give a solid B+ to, because their 1st overall pick was a little bit boring, not the sexy pick, not the Cooper DeJean pick that I wanted, but it's not a surprising pick for Green Bay because Jordan Morgan, our 1st round pick, is a very versatile offensive lineman. Many teams saw him as a guard. Green Bay's trying him out at tackle. He played left tackle and right tackle at Arizona. So he can play. Green Bay already said that he can be a starter at 4 positions. He played all 4 positions minus center. So I do like the versatility in their offensive linemen. So at least that is very nice to have. But I think they really hit it out of the park in the second round, where they had to trade back after losing out on Cooper DeJean in the second round. They traded back to pick up the top off-ball linebacker in Edgerrin Cooper and the top safety remaining in Javon Bullard, who both came from SEC teams where those SEC defenses are tough defenses. And Green Bay gets another Georgia player from that national championship winning defense, and the MVP of the Senior Bowl actually in Javon Bullard. So I think he's going to come in and make an impact right away opposite Xavier McKinney. And I think that Edgerrin Cooper will also come in and be a starting linebacker in our new 4-3 defense. And I like the running back pick that we picked up in Marshawn Lloyd, who will be the lightning to the thunder that is Josh Jacobs. And actually, some analysts had him as the number 1 overall running back in this draft. So that's a very good pickup for the Green Bay Packers, who did lose Aaron Jones. But I think that Marshawn Lloyd will quickly make us forget Aaron Jones when he makes some big plays. And then in the later rounds, we picked up a couple more safeties, another versatile offensive lineman in Jacob Monk, another strong offensive tackle project in Travis Glover, a quarterback project in Michael Pratt, and one of my favorite picks, not just because he shares my name, but Kalen King is going to be one of the star defensive backs for the Packers in a couple years.
I think it'd be Kalen.
Is it Kalen?
I think only one L would be.
Oh,
I don't
close.
know. Maybe. I don't know.
I like
He's close enough, but he is a hell of a pick. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hell of a pick.
Yeah,
for sure.
a projected first round pick at the end of last year's draft fell all the way to the 7th round after a terrible senior season where he did not stand up to his junior season stats.
Yeah, those are where you get them. I mean, everyone has a down year for XYZ reasons. So that's where you can get the value and really get some good players. Yeah, I hated the Jordan Morgan pick. I get the versatility, don't get me wrong there, but I think there was a lot of other guys on the board still. I think there's other things that you needed a little more than tackle. Tackle is definitely up there, don't get me wrong, but I think there's a few other positions that you arguably could have gone as well. Maybe even safety and got Tyler Nubin. But you made up for that and way more. You made up for it in like double day 2. I mean, you look at this 2 second-round picks with Edgerrin Cooper and Javon Bullard, who is, in my opinion, second best safety on the board, right behind aforementioned Tyler Nubin. And then even into round 3 of day 2, you pick up Marshawn Lloyd and Tyron Hooper, who I don't know much about personally, but I mean, you take another, I'm assuming, off-ball linebacker just in case the Edgerrin
pure
Cooper
coverage
doesn't work out,
linebacker,
which is a good thing to have in today's league. With the way these tight ends and running backs can come out of the backfield, that's a good thing to have. So just one of the better day 2s, I think, in this draft, easily, and probably in quite a while, one of the better day 2s that I've seen. And then, of course, the Kalen King pick is pretty good, but I just love that you guys can't leave a draft without taking a quarterback anymore, it seems like. It cracks me up. You had to just pick up Michael Pratt quick just because.
But I mean, a developmental quarterback.
Getting him in the 7th round is a pretty good pickup. Might as well when he's sitting there.
He'll be the next Matt Flynn.
The next Matt Flynn. Oh, God. Please, God. Don't tell me.
One game where he throws 17 touchdowns, and then he'll make a huge money contract and never be seen from again.
Yeah, you're cut off. The next Matt Flynn, you're done. So moving on to the final team we're going to talk about today, none other than the Minnesota Vikings. And my biggest disagreement in this entire article right here. So you know from watching our episodes, and Cal knows for sure, that I am not the type of Vikings fan that is just like, no matter what we get, I'm like, yeah. I have hated our last couple of drafts. I'll be the first to admit that I didn't even love the Justin Jefferson pick at first. Didn't hate it by any means, but I didn't love it. It, of course, panned out. I love it now. But, I mean, the last couple of drafts, even most specifically, the one I hate the most is when we moved back and could have gotten Kyle Hamilton and instead went with Lewis Cine. Absolutely tore me apart in that one. And then the next year wasn't much better. But I thought we absolutely killed it this year. I think that this was an A draft. I really do. And they gave him a C+. I don't know who did this. Nick Shook and something Files. I don't know. They're wrong though. Is my final judgment is they're wrong. I mean, you look at the first round pick and we get our quarterback of the future in JJ McCarthy. We do technically move up, but it's only one spot in a pick swap with the Giants where we only gave up like a next year third or fourth or something like that. So nothing too bad at all. And you still go get and secure your guy. And I said it many a times. I don't want JJ McCarthy at 4, but I'll take him at 11. And we pretty much got him at 11. I don't think he's going to come out and be a superstar, especially year 1. And I don't even think he starts week 1. I think we start Sam Darnold. I think he's a really good pickup when you barely have to move up to get him. And he's just going to be able to run that offense and be an elite game manager. Not an elite quarterback, but a very, very good game manager, which can still lead an extremely good and extremely powerful offense. And then the pick I like even more came 7 picks later when we move up to get the top edge rusher who had fell all the way down the board to 17. And we are the first team to take an edge rusher this draft. And we get out Alabama outside linebacker, edge rusher, Dallas Turner. Far and away my favorite Vikings pick. And I think one of my favorite picks in this entire draft. I think it was an absolute steal. This guy was a top 10, if not at the very minimum, top 15. The whole process for me, no doubt. So the fact that we were able to move up, gave up a good bit to move from, I think it'd be 24 to 17, but definitely enough that I think he's going to make up for it in the long run. So I love that. And then, we didn't have a day 2 pick, which is never a great thing. You want to get some of those second and third round guys. We had to give up a lot of those to get those two first round picks rather, but we still get some really good value in day 3, I think. Kyrie Jackson, the cornerback out of Oregon, definitely has a really low floor. There's a chance this guy turns out to be absolutely nothing, but with his speed and sitting there at 6'4" as a corner with pretty damn good coverage ability, that's a really high upside too. So that's a boom or bust pick right there, which I'm happy to take in the 4th round.
It's intangibles you can't teach.
And then one of my favorite picks in this whole draft is we finally did it. And in the 6th round, we took Will Reichert, kicker out of Alabama. We finally took the top kicker off the board. I've been wanting to do it ever since Evan McPherson in 21, 22, one of those two. I can't remember for sure. We finally did it. I think Greg Joseph is probably on his way out. We'll see in camp how these two guys perform.
He's in Green Bay.
He's already gone?
Yeah, he's in Green Bay.
Wow, I missed that one.
Yep.
When? Okay.
About a month ago.
Wow, I
brought him in to compete with Anders Carlson.
I totally missed that one. I don't know why. I thought he was on our roster this whole time. Nope. Well, then Will Riker has a pretty easy training camp battle because right now it's just him and whatever free agent they want to bring in.
You signed a kicker. You signed a UFL kicker.
I think so, yeah. But I love Will Riker. I think he's going to do really well. He was like a 5th or 6th year senior at Alabama and was one of the better kickers in their program for the last while. So that was awesome to see. And I don't personally know much about him, but I've seen a lot of reports and a lot of analysts and draft analysts, scouts, God, I can't think of it all of a sudden, saying that Levi Drake Rodriguez, the defensive tackle out of Texas A&M Commerce, which was our final pick of the draft, might be one of the biggest steals, and we got him in round 7. So I'll have to do a little more research into him, but when you got scouts coming out, multiple different scouts coming out and saying that about the guy, definitely at least shows some promise there, some upside.
Yeah, and I said this the night of it that happened, after you guys got Dallas Turner and JJ McCarthy without having them to completely mortgage the future. Well, I guess you did for Dallas Turner.
A good bit.
But
no, we have a first rounder next year.
You didn't have to trade your first rounder, which is huge because that probably would have been included if you moved up into that top 5. But after you traded up for Dallas Turner, I said you won the first round.
Easily won day 1.
Yeah. Definitely won day 1. You get your starting quarterback of the future, whether that's immediately or a year or 2 down the road. Either way, you get him for 4 or 5 years. And then you get a star edge rusher to team up in your Brian Flores led defense after you just signed Jonathan Grenard to lead your edge rushers after losing Daniil Hunter, where you basically traded each other Houston, Houston and Minnesota
Yep.
traded edge rushers.
Yeah.
But because you got two stud edge rushers, that's just incapable to match, and someone's going to get a one-on-one matchup and wreak havoc, whether that's Grenard or Dallas Turner, who could have an immediate impact like Will Anderson Jr. had for the Houston Texans last year. And one pick I really liked is Michael Juergens, the center out of Wake Forest, because there's always been trouble, it seems, with your center, with Bradbury.
He ain't got no anchor. He's too small.
He's always had trouble, and then he's always had trouble snapping too. So I think that Michael Juergens could come in and be a surprise starter for the Vikings on an offensive line.
Light a fire under his ass at the very least. Maybe that's all he needs. A couple of tidbits. After the draft, Will Anderson Jr. came out and said that Dallas Turner could be just as good, if not better than him in his rookie season, which, I mean, a lot of friends like that come out and say things like that. Maybe it's not completely true, but the fact that he'd even go on record and say that is pretty cool at the very least. And something I just realized, Danielle Hunter and DJ Wanham, and I was going to say Patrick Jones, but I think we did retain Patrick Jones. But Danielle Hunter and DJ Wanham both out, both of our starting edge rushers. 3 new edge rushers coming in. Mm-hmm. Dallas Turner, Andrew Van Ginkel, and Jonathan Grenard, all going to be new edge rushers for us. So that should be a very interesting situation to keep an eye on. And I almost wonder if we shake up kind of our whole defensive scheme a little bit with how many new faces we have and how many people we had leaving. So it'll be interesting to see. But overall, I really love this draft, and I don't understand the C+ at all. But I digress. We'll put it in the past. The past is in the past.
I thought it was for lack of picks, because I thought they didn't have any picks. I mean, they didn't. They were all late rounders, but
yeah. I mean, it's pretty cool that it's very arguable that the Vikings won day 1 and the Packers won day 2. That's kind of cool that we kept it all in the NFC North. And the Bears and Lions both had very, very solid drafts, in my opinion, as well.
NFC North is going to be tough.
It's going to be a tough division this year, that is for sure. So that was our NFL draft grades, draft recap episode, some of our favorite and least favorite drafts. Thank you guys all so much for watching. No real schedule still, just because we're definitely in that down season in the NFL right now. Things are starting to tick up. We got some mini camps happening right now. OTAs aren't too far down the line, but even that stuff isn't really much to talk about. So we will see you when we see you. Not sure when or what's that going to be exactly. But thank you all so much for watching and coming back and then continue to support. And until next time, don't forget
to eat the W.